All the thrones were hers, until a human refused to take them with her Princess Alara was destined for greatness. Born into the royal family of the Thresk Empire, she had been raised to one day inherit a galaxy, not just a throne. The galaxy itself was a collection of 1,000 planets, each ruled by a different monarch, but they were all under Alara's influence. Each world, each ruler, paid homage to the Thresk family, and under Alara's leadership the empire had grown powerful, reaching across the stars. Her beauty was unmatched, her intelligence unparalleled, and her power seemed limitless. Few dared to challenge her, and those who did were swiftly dealt with. Alara wasn't just a ruler, she was a force, a legend whispered about in every corner of the galaxy. Yet, despite her power, Alara was not content. She had a vision, a dream to unite all of the empires under one banner, her own. The thought of 1,000 rulers in one hand, all kneeling at her feet, thrilled her. It was the dream of every ruler, but she had the power to make it a reality. At her side stood Commander Jax, a human who had earned his place in her court through sheer will and loyalty. Jax had once been a soldier, a mere man who had risen from the dirt of distant planets to become one of Alara's most trusted officers. While Alara ruled with a hand of iron, Jax was her advisor, her protector, the one person who could speak to her freely without fear of consequence. Their bond had started as professional, as all relationships in the Empire did, but over the years it had become something more. Jax was the only one who could look Alara in the eyes and see the person she truly was, beyond the power and the throne. He saw the loneliness in her eyes, the quiet desperation for something more than just endless battles and endless power. Jax had fallen in love with her long before he ever admitted it to himself. But that love was tested when Alara made her most ambitious move yet, the discovery of the crown of Everlorn. Legends had spoken of it for centuries, a crown said to grant its wearer the ability to control all thrones, all power. It was said that whoever wore the crown of Everlorn would be the ultimate ruler of the universe, able to bend the will of every living being to their command. The crown had been lost to history, buried somewhere deep in the ruins of an ancient, forgotten world. But Alara, with her vast resources and unrelenting desire for more, had found it. It lay before her now, resting in a crystal chamber deep within the palace. The crown was the final piece of the puzzle, the key to her ultimate goal. As Alara prepared to claim her birthright, she summoned Jax to her side. He entered the room, his eyes immediately falling on the crown that lay on a pedestal in front of her. The ancient jewel sparkled in the light, its power radiating through the air. Jax could feel it, the pull of the crown, its undeniable promise of domination. He had always known Alara was ambitious. She had always wanted more than what was given to her. But now, as he saw the crown for the first time, he realized the true extent of her desires. "Alara," Jax said quietly, his voice filled with uncertainty. This is more than just an empire. It's everything. It's beyond any of us." Alara turned to him, her eyes shining with excitement. "That's the point, Jax," she said, her voice low and smooth. "I don't want just one world. I want them all, every throne, every empire, under my rule, and with this it will be mine." Jax felt a chill run down his spine. He had known Alara long enough to understand that once she set her mind on something, nothing could stop her. But this was different. The crown of Everlorn wasn't just about ruling, it was about control, absolute control. For the first time in his life, Jax questioned his loyalty to her. He had followed her through countless battles, had stood by her side through everything. But this was something else. If she wore that crown, she would become unstoppable. The galaxy would be hers to do with as she pleased, and he wasn't sure if he could stand by her if that happened. "Alara, listen to me," he said, stepping closer. "Power like this, it's dangerous. It changes people. You won't be the same person once you put it on." She laughed softly, almost like she hadn't heard him. "You worry too much, Jax. Power doesn't change me. It only strengthens me." Her words echoed in the room, and Jax felt a deep, gnawing fear. He knew Alara. He knew the woman behind the throne. But the woman before him now, the woman who spoke of power with such hunger, was someone he didn't recognize. He had always believed in her vision of a united galaxy. A galaxy where the different worlds could live in peace under one ruler. But now, as he looked at her, he realized that peace was never her true goal. Power was. "Alara, please," he said again, his voice pleading. "Don't do this. You don't need the crown. You already have everything." Alara looked at him then, her eyes hardening. everything. Jax, everything I have is mine by right, but this will be the final piece. This will make me untouchable. No one will dare challenge me. And you, she stepped closer to him, her voice turning colder. You could stand by my side, you could rule with me. Jax's heart ached. He had always been loyal to her, always stood by her no matter what. But now, standing in the presence of that crown, he saw the dangerous path she was choosing. The power it promised was too much for anyone to wield, let alone someone like her, someone who already had everything and yet still wanted more. No, Jax said, his voice firm now. I won't do it, Alara. I won't be a part of this. Alara stared at him, her expression unreadable. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then slowly her lips curled into a faint smile. You'll regret this, Jax, she said quietly. I always get what I want. The days after Jax's refusal were tense and filled with an uncomfortable silence. Alara, usually calm and composed, had become unpredictable. The palace that had once echoed with the sounds of laughter and celebration now felt cold, distant. The news of Jax's rejection spread quickly across the empire, like a wildfire that no one could control. Alara, who had once been the heart of the empire, had begun to withdraw into herself. She spent long hours in her chambers, staring at the crown of Everlorn. It lay there, untouched, its power taunting her. She could almost hear its whisper, urging her to claim what was hers. But something had changed. The very moment Jax had refused to stand by her side, Alara had felt an unfamiliar crack in her resolve. She couldn't understand it. She had faced enemies more terrifying than Jax, had defeated armies larger than her own. But now, the idea of him walking away felt like a wound she couldn't heal. Jax, meanwhile, was not idle. He spent his days gathering a small group of loyalists, soldiers, diplomats, and former allies who refused to follow Alara down the path of domination. These were the people who still believed in the old vision, the idea of a united galaxy where power was shared, not hoarded. But even as he rallied these forces, Jax's heart was heavy. He had always known that Alara was ambitious, but he had never imagined she would be willing to sacrifice everything, friendship, love, trust, for the sake of absolute power. Jax didn't want to believe it, but the signs were clear. Alara had already begun her campaign. Her armies, which had once been a tool for diplomacy, now marched across the galaxy with a singular purpose: to bring the entire universe under her control. Planet after planet fell to her forces. Her generals, loyal only to her, crushed any resistance with terrifying precision. The Thresk Empire was expanding, but at what cost? In the quiet moments of the night, when the rest of the palace was asleep, Jax would often find himself looking out over the city. From his balcony, he could see the lights of the capital stretching as far as the eye could see, like stars scattered across the horizon. But it wasn't the stars he focused on. It was the emptiness that had begun to creep into the galaxy. The sense that something precious was being lost with each passing day. Despite the growing resistance, Alara's empire showed no signs of slowing down, but Jax wasn't ready to give up. He couldn't, not yet. He still believed that there was a way to stop her, a way to save her from herself. But the deeper he got into the rebellion, the more he realized that Alara's vision for the galaxy was no longer the same as his. She had become obsessed with control, and there was no turning back from that obsession. One evening, as Jax was meeting with his council of rebels, a message arrived from Alara herself. It was a simple note, delivered by one of her personal messengers. Jax, his heart pounding, took the letter from the messenger and opened it. The words were short but direct. Meet me in the Grand Hall tonight. Come alone. It was a summons, a personal invitation. Jax didn't know what to think. Part of him wanted to refuse, to continue his fight and never look back. But another part of him, the part that still cared for Alara, felt a pull. Was this her way of trying to fix things, or was it a trap? He couldn't afford to ignore it. If there was even a chance to stop her from going down this dark path, he had to take it. That night, Jax made his way to the Grand Hall, the place where he had first met Alara all those years ago. The massive doors to the hall creaked open as he stepped inside, his footsteps echoing in the emptiness. The hall was bathed in moonlight, and the crown of Everlorn rested on a pedestal at the far end, its presence almost overwhelming. Alara stood there, her back to him, staring at the crown. She wore the same look she always did when she was deep in thought, calm, calculating. But tonight there was something different in her posture, something broken. "You came," Alara said without turning around. Her voice was steady, but Jax could hear the underlying strain. She hadn't expected him to come. Perhaps she thought he would continue his rebellion, continue to fight against her. But here he was, standing in front of her, the same human she had once trusted with her life. "Of course I came," Jax replied quietly, stepping closer. "You asked me to?" Elara turned to face him. Her eyes were filled with something he hadn't seen in a long time, doubt. For a moment they stood in silence, just looking at each other. The years of friendship, the battles they had fought side by side, the promises they had made, it all seemed to hang in the air between them. "You've gathered an army, Jax," Elara said, her voice soft. "You're trying to stop me. You think I've lost my way." "I think you've lost yourself," Jax said, his voice steady. "This power, it's consuming you, Elara. The galaxy doesn't need one ruler, it needs peace." Her face hardened, but she didn't raise her voice. "Peace? You think I'm doing this for peace? I'm doing this because I can. Because I have the power to do what no one else could. The galaxy needs someone strong enough to lead it." "You're right," Jax said, his heart aching. "The galaxy needs strength, but it also needs compassion. It needs someone who can understand that power without control only leads to destruction." Elara stepped forward, her gaze never leaving his. "You think I don't know that? You think I don't understand the weight of what I'm doing? But I've spent my entire life waiting for this moment. I've built an empire, and now I will make sure it stands forever. This is my destiny, Jax. You're too small to understand." Jax took a deep breath, trying to calm the anger that was rising within him. "I understand more than you think. I understand that the galaxy doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to the people who live in it. You can't just take what isn't yours." "Elara," he continued, his voice softer now, "you don't need to do this. You don't have to wear that crown. You've already proven your strength. You've already built an empire. This," he gestured toward the crown of Everlorn, "this will destroy everything you've worked for." Elara's eyes flickered with something, regret perhaps, but it was gone as quickly as it had appeared. She straightened, the cold mask of a ruler returning. "You can't stop me, Jax. You never could. And now I'm asking you to stand by my side. You can have power. You can help me rule. Together we can shape the galaxy." Jax shook his head. "I won't do it, Elara, not like this." The silence that followed was deafening. Elara stood still as though frozen in time, her gaze locked on him. Then slowly she reached for the crown. Jax's heart skipped a beat. He had tried. He had begged her to stop, but she had made her choice. And with that choice, she would condemn not just herself, but everyone in the galaxy. "I'll never stand by you if you wear that crown," Jax said quietly. Elara didn't respond. The crown of Everlorn slid onto her head with a quiet, final click. And as she turned to face him once more, Jax knew that the woman he had loved, the woman who had once been his ally, was lost forever. The days that followed Elara's coronation were filled with fear. The galaxy, once a place of diverse worlds and peaceful alliances, was now under the iron grip of one ruler. Princess Elara, crowned with the crown of Everlorn, had become more than just the leader of the Thresk Empire. She had become a force no one could defy. And yet it wasn't the power that unsettled people most, it was the change in her. Elara, the woman Jax had known for so many years, had vanished. In her place stood a ruler consumed by ambition, her eyes always fixed on the future, her mind calculating every move as if the galaxy itself was nothing more than a game of chess. She had always been ambitious, but now that ambition had taken on a darkness Jax had never expected. Jax couldn't deny it anymore. Elara had crossed a line. When she had first taken the crown, there had been a flicker of hope in him. Maybe, just maybe, she could still be the leader the galaxy needed. But that hope had quickly been crushed under the weight of her unrelenting desire to control everything. She no longer cared about diplomacy. She didn't care about the people she had once sworn to protect. All she cared about was power. The first time Jax saw her after the coronation, he barely recognized her. She was standing at the balcony of the royal palace looking out over the city. The view was breathtaking, the lights of the capital stretching far into the horizon. But it was the emptiness in her eyes that caught Jax's attention. He had always seen the fire in her, her passion, her drive to make the galaxy a better place. But now there was nothing, just an endless hunger for more. More power, more control, more of everything that would never be enough. "Elara," Jax said, stepping into the room. His voice was soft, careful. He didn't want to anger her, but he couldn't stand by and watch her destroy herself. She turned slowly to face him, her eyes cold and distant. "You're still here," she said, her voice lacking its usual warmth. "I'm still here, Jax replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "But I don't know why you're doing this. I don't know what happened to the woman I used to know." Alara's lips curled into a faint smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "She's gone, Jax," she said flatly. "The woman you knew was weak. I don't have time for weakness anymore." Jax's heart sank. He wanted to argue, wanted to make her see that what she was doing wasn't right. But he knew she wouldn't listen. Not now. Not with the crown of Everlorn on her head. The power it gave her was like a drug, and once someone tasted it, it was nearly impossible to walk away. "The galaxy doesn't need a ruler like this," Jax said, his voice growing firmer. "It needs someone who cares about the people, someone who can lead with compassion, not just force." Alara stepped closer to him, her eyes narrowed. "Compassion," she repeated, as though the word itself was foreign to her. "The galaxy is weak, Jax. It's filled with people who can't even govern themselves. You want compassion. I'll give them compassion. I'll give them peace. I'll make them see the truth, that I am the only one who can keep them in line, the only one strong enough to lead them." Jax shook his head, his frustration growing. "You're wrong. You're making the same mistakes every ruler before you made. Power without balance leads to chaos. You can't control everything. You can't control people like they're pawns on a board." Alara stepped back, her eyes flashing with anger. "I don't need you to tell me what I can and can't do, Jax. I have the power to make the galaxy bow to me, and they will." Jax's fists clenched at his sides. He had seen her fight. He had seen her command armies make decisions that saved lives, but this was different. She wasn't saving lives anymore, she was taking them. And with every world she conquered, the more people she forced into submission, Jax could feel the pull of darkness closing in on her. "I won't help you with this," he said, his voice firm but quiet. "I won't be a part of your empire if it means taking everything from everyone else." Alara's gaze hardened. "Then you are my enemy," she said coldly. Jax flinched, the words cutting deeper than he wanted to admit. "I'm not your enemy, Alara," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm your friend, I always have been." Alara didn't respond. Instead, she turned away, her gaze falling back to the city below. She didn't seem to notice the way the weight of her decisions had begun to show in her posture, the way her once confident stance had become almost rigid, as if she were carrying a burden far heavier than the crown on her head. "I don't need friends," she muttered, barely loud enough for Jax to hear. "I need power." Jax stood there watching her. He knew this wasn't just about control, it wasn't even about the crown anymore. Alara had always craved approval, but now it was as if she had stopped caring about anything but her vision of a galaxy she could mold to her will. She no longer saw people as individuals. They were tools to help her achieve her goal. And the more she used them, the less human she became. "I won't fight you," Jax said after a long pause, "but I will stop you. I'll do whatever it takes to make sure this doesn't go too far." Alara turned her head slightly, as if considering his words. Then she gave him a brief, humorless smile. "Do what you must, Jax, but you're wasting your time. You'll see soon enough that I'm unstoppable." Jax knew she believed that. He had seen it in her before, her unwavering confidence, the certainty that she was always right. But this time it wasn't just her ambition driving her. It was her fear. Fear that without the crown she would be nothing. He didn't know how, but he had to find a way to reach her. He couldn't let Alara destroy herself or the galaxy. Days turned into weeks and the Empire continued to expand. Alara's forces swept through the galaxy, taking planet after planet, crushing resistance with brutal efficiency. Jax's rebellion had grown, but it was small, fragmented. The galaxy was vast and they were outnumbered. But they kept fighting. They kept resisting. And with every victory, Jax knew he was getting closer to the truth, closer to the point where Alara's actions would no longer be able to stand. But the question remained. Would Alara realize the destruction she was causing before it was too late? Or had she already gone too far? The weeks that followed were filled with tension, and the galaxy grew darker with each passing day. Alara's empire expanded at a terrifying rate, swallowing entire planets, breaking alliances, and leaving countless worlds in fear. Her armies, unstoppable in their efficiency, marched across star systems, bringing the galaxy under her thumb. Jax knew that he was fighting a losing battle. His resistance was small, fragmented, and outmatched. But he couldn't give up. He couldn't let Alara's dream of domination become the only future for the galaxy. Each day, he gathered more people to his cause, soldiers who had once fought for her, diplomats who had once worked with her, and civilians who saw the truth of her madness. Together, they formed a fragile hope, a hope that one day they could stop her before the galaxy was completely lost to her. But despite the growing resistance, it felt as though Alara was too far gone. Each victory, each world that fell to her forces, seemed to strengthen her resolve. She was no longer the woman Jax had once known. She had become something else, something cold and distant, a ruler who saw only the endgame, not the lives in between. The woman who had once fought for a better future now only cared about power, the power to bend the galaxy to her will. Jax had tried. He had begged her to stop, to understand that peace was the true strength, not domination. But with each passing day, he felt as though he was losing her more and more. The tipping point came when Jax received a secret message from a trusted ally in Alara's palace. The message was short, but its implications were clear. Alara was preparing for her final move. She was planning something catastrophic, a weapon that would bring the galaxy to its knees, one that would make all resistance futile. Jax couldn't let this happen. He knew that if this weapon were unleashed, there would be no stopping Alara. The galaxy, as it was known, would fall under her control. There would be no room for rebellion, no place for freedom. If he was going to stop her, he would have to act quickly. He gathered his most trusted rebels, those who had fought beside him since the beginning. They were a small group, but they had proven themselves time and again. They had the skills, the courage, and the determination to take on the impossible. The plan was simple: get inside Alara's palace, find the weapon, and destroy it before it could be used. It was a dangerous mission, one that had no guarantees, but Jax knew it was the only way to save the galaxy. As they prepared for the mission, Jax couldn't shake the feeling of dread that hung over him. This would be the final confrontation. There was no going back. If they succeeded, they could stop Alara, end her reign of terror. But if they failed, it would be the end of everything. The galaxy would fall to her, and no one would ever challenge her rule again. With heavy hearts and determined minds, the group set off toward the heart of the Thresk Empire, the palace where Alara sat on her throne, ruling with an iron fist. The journey was long and perilous, but they pressed on. The fate of the galaxy depended on their success. They arrived at the palace under the cover of darkness. The city surrounding it was quiet, eerily so, as if the people knew that something terrible was about to happen. Jax and his team moved quickly and silently, avoiding the patrols that marched through the streets. They reached the palace gates without incident, but they knew the real challenge lay inside. The palace was a maze of corridors, each one more imposing than the last. The walls were lined with ornate tapestries and statues, reminders of the Empire's glory. But to Jax, it all felt hollow. There was no beauty in these halls anymore, only emptiness. Alara had built her empire on the backs of those who had believed in her, and now she had turned that power into something monstrous. They reached the central chamber, where Alara was rumored to be overseeing the final stages of her weapon's construction. The door was guarded as expected. 2 soldiers stood outside, their eyes sharp and watchful, but Jax's team was ready. In moments, the guards were neutralized, and the door was open. Inside, the room was filled with the hum of machinery, the soft whir of powerful engines and computers working together to create the weapon that would change everything. In the center of the room, surrounded by monitors and blinking lights, stood the weapon, a massive, shining core, pulsing with raw energy. It was unlike anything Jax had ever seen, a machine of unimaginable power that could wipe out entire star systems with a single command. And standing in front of it, her back to him, was Alara. Jax's heart skipped a beat. Seeing her like this, standing at the center of her empire's destruction, was almost more than he could bear. She looked different, still beautiful but cold. The crown that she had worn so proudly was now a symbol of her descent into madness. "Alara," Jax said, his voice soft but firm, "stop this. You don't have to do this. There's still time to make things right." Alara didn't turn to face him. She didn't even flinch at the sound of his voice. Instead, she continued to monitor the controls in front of her, her fingers moving over the buttons with practiced ease. "You've come all this way just to stop me?" she asked, her voice detached, almost bored. "Do you think you can change anything now, Jax? The galaxy is mine, and I will not let anyone stand in my way." Jax's heart sank, but he couldn't give up. He had to try one last time. "Alara, please, this isn't the way. You've already built an empire. You don't need this weapon. You don't need to destroy everything to prove your power." She finally turned to him, her cold eyes locking with his. For the first time in a long time, there was a flicker of something familiar in her gaze. A brief moment of hesitation. "You don't understand, Jax," she said quietly. "I've spent my entire life building this. Everything I've done, every choice I've made has been for this moment. I can't just let it all slip away. This weapon will ensure that I never lose control again." Jax stepped closer, his voice softer now. "You don't need control, you need freedom. You need to let go, Alara. The galaxy will never bow to one ruler. You'll only destroy what you've worked so hard to build." She shook her head, her expression hardening. "It's too late for that. I'm already too far gone, and so are you." Before Jax could react, Alara's fingers pressed a final key, and the weapon hummed to life. The core at the center of the room began to glow brighter, its energy building, ready to unleash its destructive force. Jax knew they didn't have much time. He made a decision in that moment. He couldn't change Alara's mind, not now, but he could stop the weapon. Without hesitation, Jax sprinted toward the central control panel. He knew what he had to do. He had to destroy it, no matter the cost. As his hand reached the control panel, Alara's voice rang out, desperate and full of fury. "No, don't you dare!" But it was too late. With one final push, Jax activated the failsafe, and the weapon's core collapsed in on itself, its power short-circuiting and dissipating into the air. The room was filled with a blinding flash of light, and then silence. The weapon was gone, but the cost had been great. Jax collapsed to his knees, his body drained from the effort. He had no idea if they had won, if they had even saved the galaxy. All he knew was that the woman he had once loved, the woman who had dreamed of a united galaxy, had now chosen a path that would tear it all apart. Alara stood motionless, her face a mask of shock and disbelief. The crown of Everlorn, once so powerful, now seemed to weigh heavy on her head. She looked at Jax, her eyes filled with something, perhaps regret, perhaps anger, but it was too late for any of it to matter now. Jax knew that the fight wasn't over, but this battle at least was won. The silence that followed the destruction of the weapon was deafening. Jax could feel his heart pounding in his chest, the rush of adrenaline still coursing through him. He barely had the strength to stand, his legs shaking beneath him, but he managed to rise to his feet, his gaze never leaving Alara. The glow of the crown of Everlorn, once so bright and full of promise, now seemed dim and empty, as if the power it had once given her had begun to fade away. Alara stood motionless, her eyes wide in shock, as if she couldn't quite comprehend what had just happened. You did it," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You stopped me." Jax didn't answer right away. He was too exhausted, too overwhelmed by everything that had transpired. But he knew that this wasn't over. The weapon was gone, but Alara, still standing before him, the woman who had once been his friend, wasn't the same. The galaxy was still in danger, and she was still the ruler of a broken empire. "Alara," Jax said softly, his voice hoarse, "it's not too late to change. You can still make things right. This empire, this galaxy doesn't need a ruler who controls everything with fear. It needs someone who understands the people, who leads with compassion, not domination." For a long moment, Alara didn't respond. She simply stood there as though she were processing the words, as though she were struggling to find the person she had once been, the person Jax had known. "I don't know how to fix it, Jax," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've gone too far. I've hurt too many people, I've taken too much. The galaxy is mine, I've already made my choices." Jax took a step toward her, his eyes filled with both sorrow and hope. "You can still undo it. You don't have to rule this way. You don't have to be alone in this." Alara's eyes flickered, and for a brief moment, Jax saw a flash of the woman she had once been. The woman who had once cared about the people, who had dreamed of a united galaxy. But that moment was fleeting, and she quickly turned away as if she were afraid to let herself feel anything. "I can't go back," she said, her voice breaking. "The crown, it's too powerful, it's already changed me. I'm not the same person anymore, Jax. I don't know who I am without it." Jax felt his heart ache for her. He had seen the change in her over the years, the way her ambitions had grown, the way she had become consumed by the power she sought. But even now, in this moment of despair, he refused to give up on her. "Alara," he said again, taking another step closer. "You're still the same person, the woman I knew, the woman who wanted peace for the galaxy. She's still in there. You just have to let go of the crown, let go of the power that's been controlling you." She turned to face him then, her expression hard, but there was a hint of something else in her eyes, something vulnerable, something he hadn't seen in a long time. You think it's that simple? She asked, her voice quiet but sharp. You think I can just give it up? You think I can walk away from everything I've worked for? Jax shook his head. No, I don't think it's easy, but I know you, Alara. I know you can do this. You've already done so much. You've built this empire, but now you can build something else, something better. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. For a long time, Alara didn't move, her gaze fixed on him. Jax could see the struggle in her eyes, the conflict between what she had become and what she could still be. She was trapped by her own choices, but he believed she could find her way back. I'm scared, Jax, she admitted quietly, her voice barely audible. I'm scared of losing everything. I'm scared of being nothing without the crown. Jax stepped closer, his voice gentle. You won't lose everything. You'll find something new, something real. You don't need the crown to be who you are, you just need to be yourself. Alara's eyes softened, and for the first time in what felt like forever, a tear slipped down her cheek. She reached up almost absently and touched the crown that still sat on her head. It was as if she had just noticed it was there, this weight, this symbol of everything she had wanted and feared. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. I don't know if I can let it go. Jax nodded, understanding. It won't be easy, but you don't have to do it alone. I'm here, and I believe in you. The silence stretched on, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Then slowly, as though the decision had finally become clear to her, Alara's hands trembled as she reached up to remove the crown of Everlorn. She held it in her hands for a moment, gazing at it as though seeing it for the first time. And then, with a deep breath, she placed it on the pedestal at the center of the room, its power now dimming. Jax watched her, his heart swelling with both relief and hope. This was the first step, the first real choice she had made in so long. And it was a choice to step away from the darkness, to begin the long road to redemption. I'm sorry, Jax, Alara said, her voice thick with emotion. I'm so sorry for everything I've done. Jax stepped forward and placed a hand on her shoulder. You don't have to apologize. You've made mistakes, we all have, but what matters now is what you do next. She nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and determination. What happens now? Jax smiled gently. Now we rebuild together. The journey ahead would not be easy. The galaxy was in ruins, the wounds inflicted by Alara's reign of power too deep to heal overnight. But for the first time in a long time, there was hope. Hope that the galaxy could recover, hope that people could come together again, and hope that Alara could find her way back to the person she had once been. Jax didn't know what the future held. He didn't know if they could ever undo the damage that had been done. But he knew one thing for certain. He would stand by Alara. He would help her rebuild not just the galaxy, but herself. And together, they would find a way to create a future where no one would need to wear a crown to feel powerful. As they stood in the quiet of the palace, surrounded by the ruins of Alara's empire, they knew that the real battle had just begun. But for the first time, they were ready to face it together.